In Hollywood, they teach you that if you're going to have success, and that's what we're talking about today. This was how to be a good Jew in the materialistic world. We're talking about success, right? That's what we want. We want some success. So they teach you, first of all, oh my gosh. That's surprising. So they teach you when you go to a meeting, be confident. You go into that meeting and they offer you a drink. You don't say, oh, what do you have? You say, yes, I would like a drink. And they say, well, what would you like? You say, well, I'll have coffee, black. Or you'll say, 1 lump of sugar. You know what you say, I'd like a drink of water. And they'll say, ice in that? You say, no, room temperature. So I did that at a meeting. I went to the meeting, and the woman said, would you like water? And I said, yes, please. And she said, do you want ice? And I said, no, room temperature. She started to walk out of the meeting, and I said, wait, not this room. I'd like you to go down the hall. There was a really nice room at the end of the hall to the right, and set it down there for about 3 minutes and let it warm slowly. Then bring it down the hall slowly so as not to shock it. And then bring it quickly through this room, because I don't like this room very much. That woman was having a relationship with the producer, and I did not get that job. So do not be overconfident. That's the first lesson on being successful. So I had a rabbi tell me, if you're going to be successful, you have to look in the Torah. They're always saying, look in the Torah. Everything's in the Torah. They're doing this. Have you seen the rabbis do this? Torah, Torah, Torah. Right? It's an occupational hazard. They're going to get carpal tunnels doing this, I think. You know? So we looked in there with this rabbi, and he said, let's look at the Parsha. The Parsha. When I was a kid, we called it the Torah, the Parsha of the week. Each week we read a different portion, so we're looking in there. And that week it happened to be Vayetze, which is somewhere in the book of Genesis, and it's all about how Jacob is having all this trouble in Haran. We're still having trouble with Iran. And in Haran, it starts with an H, and it was a terrible place. It was too hot. They worked him too long. Then they cheated him. He had this guy, Lavan, was his uncle, his cousin, was being terrible to him, changing his contract, very much like Hollywood. Changing contracts, they work you to death. It's not fun. So let's look at that. We'll see, is that like Hollywood? It's just not fair. So how did he react is the question. And it was interesting because there are a lot of parallels. So the first question that we have to say, if you're going to go into this pressure cooker of Haran, we have to say, well, what is success, really, you know? And we know that Hollywood is a pressure cooker when it comes to success because look at all of the casualties, right? It's a high-pressure business. And I'm sort of saddened by this because some people that I really respected as artists have crashed and burned terribly. This year we lost Whitney Houston, a woman with some of the most amazing vocal cords in the history of singing. And this woman, with all that success, couldn't fill, when I was in the church, we called it the God-shaped void. We come to this planet and we talked about looking for a connection, looking for meaning. And with all that success, she couldn't survive when her voice started to go and she needed to fill it with something else. And for her, unfortunately, it was chemical dependency. And we saw where that went. Michael Jackson, Heath Ledger, River Phoenix, Demi Lovato has been cutting herself. Lindsay Lohan can't stay out of jail. What the heck is going on over there? Well, it is a high-pressure place. So to find success there can be very difficult. Now, I would bet that each of you, in your own way, if you look at what you do for a living or what you're doing at school or what you're doing in your relationships, you can relate to a sense of pressure and a sense of anxiety because we all want to find success in those places. So the question is, how do we find that success? Another example of this, by the way, in Hollywood, if you look at what are the stages of production of a Hollywood movie? Anyone know? Well, first it starts with wild enthusiasm. And then it proceeds immediately to reality setting in. And we go from there to disillusionment. And the next part of the process is utter despair. And finally, they finish the project with the total and complete persecution of the innocent. That's the life of a Hollywood project. And the life of a Hollywood personality starts with the first stage, who's Dave Weiss? The second stage is, get me Dave Weiss. The third stage is, get me someone like Dave Weiss. And the fourth stage is, who's Dave Weiss? It's a pressure cooker. So let's look and see. What can we do about success? Where can we find success? So here's what I ended up doing when I got there after talking to my rabbi. I redefined success, and I had to. So what is success? I said, success for me is the percentage of days, hours, or even minutes that you can spend feeling joyful, peaceful, or even just sort of having a pleasant time. Because in this life, if you can attain joy, peace, or just having a pleasant time, you're doing pretty well. Now, I would like to define it as something else, but the truth is we have no control over anything else. And what I just described, you can actually attain through discipline. This thing is kind of echoing. Is it bothering anyone? Only me. Okay, fine, we'll keep going. So here's the proof, by the way. Apparently, it says in the Talmud that 3 things are hidden from mankind. The day of our death, God forbid, which business endeavors will fail and succeed, and the 3rd thing nobody knows because it's hidden from mankind. So let's stay with the second one. And I can tell you, I know that I never know what's going to fail and what's going to succeed. I try to figure it out. I worked on a project once that looked like a sure slam dunk career maker, and this is when I needed such a thing. I was called in to take a meeting with a guy by the name of Tim Allen. I don't know if you guys have heard of Tim Allen, right? So he's the voice of Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story, right? Funny guy, was in Home Improvement for a long time. So we drive into the valley. He's got this warehouse about the size of 2 of these rooms, with an office that runs over the expanse this side. And down here, it's all automobiles, classic and high-end automobiles, being worked on by a fleet of his private mechanics. There must have been about 4, 5, 6, about 8 bays of automobiles. We go into this office looking over the automobiles, and he's very friendly, and we immediately sit down and spend about an hour and a half talking about the Kabbalah. I don't know anything about the Kabbalah, but he is a Kabbalah student, and a student of quantum physics. And he has a book that he's written. He's just come back from Switzerland, where he was at a conference on quantum physics. And so he leaves about a half hour left over for us to talk about this project. And he wants to do The Cat in the Hat, which, as many of you know, eventually wound up being made by Mike Myers into what I thought was not a very happy movie. But so we're going to talk to Tim about it. We get through this whole thing, and we get this phone call that Tim really likes where we're going with it, and he wants us to work it a little bit more. So we work it out, we get it figured out. We're like, wow, Tim Allen? And we go in to pitch it at DreamWorks, and we pitch to the junior executive and the senior executive, and then we pitch to, we're going in with Mike Ovitz, who at the time was running a company called CAA. Actually, he just left CAA and had started his own company. He was a big shot there. He ran Disney for a while. And we go in to pitch, and we go up and up, and finally we get this phone call that says, can you guys come back in on Tuesday? Steven Spielberg has heard the outline of the pitch. He loves it. He's flying back from the Hamptons, and he wants to meet with you guys and hear this take, Cat in the Hat. And we're like, so we are getting all ready for Tuesday, and call and the meeting's off. Jeffrey Katzenberg decided that the rights for the movie are, since they're expiring next week, and you'd have to pay $2 million more to Dr. Seuss's widow, he's had enough. He's not going to pay $2 million more for this. He's tired of developing it. It's dead. Like, come on! So we give up because, what are you going to do? A year later, we get a phone call from Robin Williams' producer. Robin is interested now in doing The Cat in the Hat. Actually, we had a meeting with Mike Ovitz's company and pitched our take, told them the sad story about what happened with Tim Allen. Said, we want to hear it. We pitch it to them. They love it. They say, hey, would you be willing to do it with Robin Williams? We're not working at the time. Well, I don't know. Robin Williams, he's kind of a hack. Are you crazy? We'll do it with Robin Williams in a minute. And then they make a phone call and say, oh, Barry Levinson, who's one of my favorite directors, he's over in Ireland. Would you guys mind if we send him the outline? They send it to Barry Levinson. Barry Levinson flies back from Ireland. We have a meeting with Robin Williams, Mike Ovitz, and Barry Levinson to pitch our story to the widow Seuss. She comes down from San Diego, and they bake a cake that looks like the Cat in the Hat. Michael Ovitz introduces us and says, here's Dave and Dave. And we tell this story. The widow Seuss listens and says, that's lovely, boys. And then she gives Robin Williams notes on his performance. Robin, you're a lovely performer, but you've got to make some decisions about what voice you're going to use. And Robin says, if you want, I can bring my Oscars in. He was somewhat gracious, but he was annoyed. She gives her blessing, and we go off to all the studios to pitch this story. And now we've got Barry Levinson, Robin Williams, the rights to the book, Michael Ovitz, and this story. We go and we pitch it at Paramount Studios to Sherry Lansing, who was then chairman of the company. And Sherry says, she listens to this pitch. And it was a lovely pitch with a kind of heartbreaking story about a man trying to raise these poor 2 children. And he learns, this is what we came up with, is he learns at the end of this story, because his wife had died in childbirth, and we know that he's having a hard time with their birthdays. And what we learn is that he was so brokenhearted by this loss that he's never been able to completely bond with his kids. And what the story comes to teach him is that he learns that he didn't lose his wife because of the kids. They were her gift to him. And Sherry Lansing's eyes watered up. And she said, boys, you have told me a lovely story. But I got to be honest with you. With Barry and Robin and Michael, this is going to cost me $110 million before we ever even roll a foot of film. It's just too rich for our diet. And that's what happened at every studio. And the greatest attachment that I ever had on a project died within about 2 weeks. And I thought, what do you got to do to get a break in this business? Cut to about 4 weeks later, we get a phone call from our agent. Sherry Lansing has remembered our pitch. And she calls us in and says, boys, I'm really sorry about the Cat in the Hat, but it was a beautiful thing. We'd like to offer you guys a 2-picture deal to work on Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius for us, and then a movie that you want to make on your own, which became Clockstoppers. So from this, I learned this. I have no control over anything on this planet. I just don't. I couldn't have guessed in a million years that we couldn't sell a movie with Barry and Robin. And I wouldn't have guessed in a trillion years that Sherry Lansing was going to call me out of the blue and just give me a 2-picture deal with offices on the lot. It was some of the funnest 2 years we ever had at the old Paramount Studios, which is a great studio. So we have no control. Our Talmud tells us that, and if you pay attention in life, you will realize you don't control very little. The few things you control, we'll talk about right now. You control your attitude. That's what you control. You control whether or not you smile. You could barely control if you can open this bottle of water. See? There's proof right there. It says drink, but you can barely do it. I'm going to leave the lid off and then sneak up on it. So what did Jacob do if you can't control anything? Well, here's the first thing he did. If you look at this part of the Torah, the first thing he did was he worked really hard. You can control that. He worked really hard. He worked for 7 years to win the wife that he wanted, right? I think he wanted Rachel. Rachel, you got to when you say it. And then he worked another 7 years because he was tricked by a trickster. And he worked another 7 years for Leah. I got it backwards, right? Didn't he wanted Rachel, he got Leah. He worked another 7 years to get who he wanted. Now, what would I do in that situation? I've been cheated. This is terrible. I'll get this guy to work. I'm going to take a nap, not work very hard. I'm going to steal because he owes me. He's stealing 7 years. That's where we typically go. Not Jacob. He works really hard. He works really honestly. He's not bitter. Can we do that? That's hard. Interestingly, you have control over that. But what do? We complain. Here's the thing we have control over, and instead of taking control, we complain. Step number 1, you want to be successful in this materialistic world? Work hard, don't complain. Simple enough. Step 2, what does Jacob do next? Well, guess what? Turn a couple pages, he takes a nap. He goes to sleep. He has a good sleep, he has a dream, it's very nice. Go to sleep. We don't sleep. What happens is we worry. We work hard and then we worry and we don't sleep. But we have a beautiful psalm, a Tehillim, as they say. Psalm 127. I love this one. It says, unless the Lord builds the house, you labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is useless to rise up early and retire late to eat the bread of painful labor, because the Lord gives to his beloved even while they sleep. It takes an act of faith to shut off the television, close your laptop and put the email away, get rid of your cell phone, let all that go. You want to keep that on because you're hoping that something's going to come over the hill and save you from this mess. It never happens that way, but we're afraid to go to sleep. It's an epidemic in the States. People are staying up later and later and later because they're afraid, because they're anxious. They're waiting for something to save them. So they watch TV, they do whatever. Jacob went to sleep. I recommend it. I just had a lovely nap. It's very good. So we got Jacob working hard and then proving that he's got some faith by going to sleep. You really believe that God is in control of the world? I don't control anything. You don't control anything, so go to sleep. He wakes up, then he has a little meeting with God. It's an interesting thing. He wakes up and has a meeting. And God tells him, trust in me. Trust in me. I'm going to take care of this. Do we trust in him? I don't trust in him. I trust in him until my bank account starts to go down. I have a lot of faith. My faith is directly proportional to my bank account. And as my bank account goes down, interestingly, my faith goes down. Right? That's not faith. He says, trust in me. Well, how do you trust in him? You test it. Well, here's an example of how we test it. I come home on a Friday. It's Shabbos. Shabbos. We talked about that last time, right? Shabbos. You guys remember Shabbos, right? The day of rest, our lips go to sleep. I come home and I sit down and it's the day of rest. It's not the day of rest. It's the nightmare of rest. I come home and I sit at the table and I'm exhausted and I'm freaked out about the day. Anybody relate to this? You've had a crazy hectic day. You've raced home to get home because you want to have your break. I sit down at the table. I've got this beautiful table of a couple beautiful kids and this amazing wife. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking about the day. And it's a disaster this day and I don't know how I'm going to solve it because I think I'm in control. I know I'm not, but I think I am. And I'm sitting there and I'm not relaxed at all. So I have to take deep breaths and go, I am not in control. There is a God. He is in control. I'm supposed to believe that. This is a discipline. You have to learn it. Faith does not come to you in the mail. You have to exercise your faith muscle. My father was a trumpet player. He was a great trumpet player. And he would play the trumpet. I would hear it when I was a kid. I would hear, hours and hours. I thought he was insane. Why is the man doing this? And then, when I was older, I went to a concert one day, and he stood up in this concert, and Carmen Dragon, a famous conductor in the States, taps on the podium, and my father stands up in an auditorium of about 2,000 people, lights down, and he plays The Shadow of Your Smile by himself. And the orchestra just sits and listens for a moment. Spotlight. I can't sing, but and the audiences, their eyes were just dripping. And I was stunned. It was gorgeous. And my father's eyes were electric. There was a joy and an excitement that was coming out of those eyes because he knew that he was making gorgeous music. And then it made sense to me, all of that discipline, all of that ritual, all of that repetitive activity. Well, we have to do that if we want to have faith. So I'm back at this table and I'm going, all right, if I pretend that everything is okay, maybe everything will be okay. My wife and my kids want to believe that I care about them, that I think that they're the most important thing in the room. And what do I think is the most important thing? My work. I'm worried about it. So my kids start talking and I listen. And then I drink the wine because the wine is there, and that's good. And then my other kid starts talking. And sure enough, if I'm disciplined about this and don't give in to the worry, within about a half an hour, I start to forget about work. And then Shabbos actually starts to happen. But it takes that discipline to trust in Hashem. The last thing that we hear is there's a reason that there's this cup on the table. We drink the wine. There's a reason for the wine. I say don't put grape juice in the cup unless you have a problem with wine. Wine is good. It says in the Talmud somewhere that there's no happiness for man but for meat and wine. And there's some truth to that. Wine, it lightens your spirit a little bit. And a little bit. A lot of wine, not so good. But we put wine in a kiddush cup for a reason. So here we are. Now, let's test this theory. I go off to get another pitch. And my writing partner and I are pitching on a project at Disney called Tinkerbell. They wanted to do a live-action version of Tinkerbell. They've yet to do it. But we get asked to pitch this idea. And again, my jobs go like this. I work, I don't work, I work, I don't work, and my faith is up, my faith is down, kind of depending on the job. And I get there to meet this producer, and we take the meeting, and it goes very well. And we come up with an idea for the thing, and we're working on it for about, 3 months. We work on this pitch. And finally, it's about time to go see Disney. And the Friday before we go to see Disney, my writing partner, we have a perfect pitch. It's all worked out. My writing partner throws in this little wrench. He comes up with some cockamamie idea that doesn't make any sense to me at all. But the way Hollywood works frequently is, he'll pitch an idea. The producer goes, I love that. Now, the producer in this case is kind of an idiot. And I love him dearly, but he just will say yes to anything because his job basically is to throw everything at the wall and whatever sticks is fine. Right? So if this works, great. If it doesn't work, who cares? He's got 4 other projects he's going to pitch next week and 4 the week after that. This is my bread and butter. And I can see ahead and tell you that idea won't hold up through the second act. So I start to grumble and say, guys, this isn't such, this is the reason, and I get voted down. Now, my choice is this. I can complain, and earlier in my career, I used to complain and fight and say, this has got to stop. And I might even put friction in the partnership with my partner. I might begin to cause a little fighting, a little tough little work environment. We'll kind of be, it's almost like husband and wife. We'll get kind of, complainy with each other. But I've learned that that's not a great thing. With some discipline, if I trust that Hashem is in control, I can either be disrespectful and fight and cause trouble, or I can take a deep breath and exercise this discipline, and be decent and be fair and be kind and do whatever I can within those parameters. That limits, I can't yell now. I want to yell. Yelling is better. Yelling is louder. I can't yell. So I end up going home for Shabbos, knowing that this job that I really need is going to crash and burn. Because one of two things are going to happen when I get there. Either Nina Jacobson, who was at the time running Disney before they fired her for being too successful, she had produced the Pirates of the Caribbean and the Chronicles of Narnia and a bunch of other great men. And then they just fired her because that's the way Wall Street works. She's doing okay. She went off to produce the Hunger Games. But we're going to have this meeting with her, and she's going to hear this pitch, and she's going to either A, think we're idiots because we pitched this crazy thing in the middle, or B, she's going to hire us to do the job, and then when we realize there's the problem and she's paid us all this money and it crashes and burns, she's going to hate us. And then we won't work at Disney again. Shabbos, I sit down at the table, and this is going through my head. And here's this beautiful wife and these kids, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I got to concentrate, because this percentage of hours spent joyful, peaceful, or even pleasant, I've got to make these minutes count, because these are the minutes I have, and this is all I have control over. I have control over nothing else, just my attitude and whether I can enjoy the Shabbos. Now, a quick note, how's my time doing over there? I'm okay. I know I'm okay. I didn't ask that. I asked how my time was. You're okay, too. Okay. How much time do I have? I have no control over this at all. 20 minutes? Oh, great. I'm going to take a quick nap. I'll be right back. No, since I have 20 minutes, I'll take an extra 3 minutes here and tell you a quick thing about this. One of the ways to have a good Shabbos and to have a good life, right, and to have joy and peace is to make sure that we're loving our family. That's what Shabbos is for. Quick example of love, and I think I heard which one? Where is he? One of the good rabbis here today talked about this a little bit, and there are many good rabbis, so it's not my fault. If you all weren't so good, but for me, I learned this from my Rabbi Goldberg in Los Angeles, and he learned it from his Rabbi Orlowick. And he talked about, I think Lori Plotnick mentions this too as well, by the way. He talks about what the definition of love is. Love is, according to Rabbi, well, you think love is chicken. I love chicken. What do you do with the chicken you love? You set it free. You don't eat it, right? You love my Toyota? Your Toyota's trying to kill you. It sticks to the floor of the accelerator. You're going to die. You love that? No. And when it gets rusty, you trade it in. That's love? No. So he said, love means what's important to you is important to me. Now, that sounds like a cliche, right? Try this at home. This is very, very hard. Try this at the Shabbos table when you're worried about your job that you're going to go to this meeting on Monday, okay? Your wife starts telling you about her week. Well, honey, the thing is this, that the cleaning lady came and she was using the dusting rag, and she used the wrong dusting rag. I put the crystal thing, put a nick at the crystal. Now I got to take the crystal, I got to polish the thing, and I had to take Sammy to school early because now I have the crystal. It doesn't take too long. And I'm over here going like this. Oh, God, make it stop. I don't care about the crystal or the nick or the dust or the cleaning lady. If I did, I wouldn't have a cleaning lady. I don't say that because I'm not completely insane. I'm only this much insane. But she can see me going, what the heck is she talking about? And so she's over here and she's like, he doesn't care. And she really doesn't care as much about the crystal as she does about whether her husband is interested in what she's interested in. So her face falls. And I look over at her face, and I'm a man. And what do men want? Men want their wives to adore them. Men want their wives to see them as the strong buck stallion that goes out to work and brings home the money and puts the food on the table and can do no wrong. We want to be adored. And in fact, the reason we get so angry when we're criticized is because we're afraid to feel pain. So when a wife criticizes us and they don't adore us, it hurts. We don't like to hurt. So when we say, how dare you criticize me, what we're really saying is, don't hurt me, because we're babies. So now I'm hurt, and I'm kind of huffy and angry, and I'm like, oh. And I go off to work looking for a job, kind of low and bummed, and now I really have control over nothing. And they see me at a meeting, and they're like, that guy doesn't look happy. I don't want him in the room, and I don't get the job because I didn't care about the crystal. So now it's Shabbos. My wife is talking to me, and I remember Rabbi Goldberg said that, Rabbi Orlowik said that love means what's important to you is important to me. This is a lesson we put into Shrek. Go back and watch Shrek 2, and you'll see this in there. So now she starts talking again, and she's like, oh, honey, the thing is that cleaning lady, she came and she put the wrong soap in the dishwasher, and the soap is all sudsy, and it goes up to the highest level in the glass, and the streaking, and the thing around the soap, and the thing is coming out, and I'm over here going, okay, second chance, dishwasher, soap, cracking, okay. Soap, dishwasher. Must have been so disappointing. I'm really sorry about that, honey. And she's over here going, is he listening to me? And I see her face soften a little bit, so I'm like, is there something I can do about that for you, honey? And I see her face kind of soften, her eyes sort of melt, and she's like, no, that's okay, I just kind of wanted to tell you about it. And I'm like, wow, that was amazing. And then she has this last little look, thanks, sweetie. And then she's, cutting the dinner, and I'm looking at her, I'm thinking, she loves me. Yeah, that's because I'm a heck of a guy. That's because I can slay dragons. And I go off to work feeling like I'm in control, which is a lie, by the way. And they see me and they say, wow, whatever that guy's having, I want some. And I get the job because I knew about the soap in the dishwasher. Love means what's important to you is important to me. So I sit at the table on Shabbos, and I listen to things that I ordinarily would not care about at all, and I drink the wine. Nowadays, in modern times, things are even harder, so we've added l'chaims. L'chaim. And I listen to these beautiful children, and the more I relax, and the more I listen, and the more I realize I have control over nothing, the more I appreciate how spectacular these people are, and what a lucky, lucky man I am to have a home to come to and to sit at. And then my eyes start to water, because this life is crazy, and we have control over so little. But if we take control of our attitude, and we exercise the discipline, which takes practice, we can have this Shabbos. So that's the Shabbos I have going into Monday. Now we get to Monday, and I'm driving to Disney to face this terrible, horrible meeting. What's going to happen? And I kid you not, as I'm driving along, I'm driving kind of all panicked and worried. I'm not following any of my steps. I didn't sleep well, right? I haven't been able to do any work over the weekend, and I did drink the wine. That was good. And I'm trying to trust the Lord, but it's not going that way. And I'm just thinking, ultimately, I really remember this statement. I'm not in control. If I make a phone call and yell at Bob, the producer, and my partner and say, you idiots are going to ruin this, all I'm going to do is we're going to go into a meeting with terrible energy. So I'm driving along, and all of a sudden, I start to laugh. I start to laugh because for a moment, I actually realize that whether I want to believe in God or not, I am not in control. And I laugh, and I think, all right, you're in control. And then I started to cry. I'm driving down the 134 to Disney. I'm a grown man, and I'm crying because God is in control. And that's really nice. It's just relaxing. So I'm laughing, and I'm crying, and there's somebody in the car next to me who's thinking about calling 911. This guy's having a nervous breakdown on the 134. I get to Disney. I go in, we pitch to Nina Jacobson. She's gracious, she's lovely, she listens. I'm thinking we're doomed. Either way, she buys it, we can't write it. She hates us, we won't work here again. And she finishes, and she says, you know, guys, this is great. I love this. Just one thing. In the middle of Act 2, you have this one part of the story that I think is going to cause some trouble. Can we do something about that? And I say, well, you know, actually, we had looked at this kind of two different ways, and we really liked the way we had it, but we also thought just in case maybe this other way would work, and I pitched my way without saying, well, I told you so. I was thinking it. And she says, that fixes it. That's great. Let's do that. And Bob Simons, the producer, says, great. We're happy with that. And my partner says, that's great. Yeah, we had this backup plan all along. And Nina Jacobson says, all right, well, what do you need from me? And Bob says, I just need you to cut a check so I can put the guys to work. And she calls out to her, hey, tell the county to cut the check. I want these guys to start. And we got that gig. The movie never got made. We did 2 or 3 drafts, but it paid for 2 more years of Jewish education for my children. And if you knew anything about Walt Disney, he'd be turning in his grave. May he rest in peace. His little frozen head. I have no control. I don't know what's going to happen next. But I can learn from our father. I can learn from Jacob, who lived in a very hard place. And you guys all live in a hard place. South Africa, it's lovely. You go for a walk out on the street. You look at the beautiful, you have all these beautiful wires over your head. All that laundry you can do in the fresh air on those wires. It's so nice. I want to tell my wife we should move here. You'd love it, honey. The laundry can blow in the wind on the beautiful wires. It's great. You know a little bit about trying to survive in this materialistic world. And from what I've met of you, you also know a little bit about making some success. I would like to encourage you to find the success that comes from not being in control, the success that will last and go with you to eternity. And you'll do that with a couple simple tricks. Okay? Work really hard. You guys have that down. Go to sleep. I haven't seen as much of that in South Africa. Right? Go to sleep. Take a meeting with God and trust in Him. You have some wonderful Rebbeim in this community, amazing teachers. This program is astounding. Go Chief. Take advantage of that stuff. And lastly, drink the wine. L'chaim. Thank you very much for having me. Don't go. I purposefully finished 10 minutes early because some of the most fun I have is doing questions and answers. And so if any of you have any questions, we have about 10 minutes, is that right? Well, now we have 9 minutes. But, and by the time they get you a microphone, we'll have 8 minutes. But you can ask about anything, Hollywood. And if you want to wait, don't wait for the microphone. Shout out your question and I'll repeat it. That'll be faster, okay? Hollywood, actors, Jewish stuff, whatever you want. Any questions? Anybody? Yes? How do I deal with being a religious Jew in Tinseltown, and how do they deal with it? It's interesting, what I've noticed when I first started out becoming more observant in Hollywood, I was very nervous and timid about it. So I had a lot of apologies and a lot of trying to keep it a secret. I wore a baseball hat almost everywhere, instead of covering my head with a yarmulke. And I've realized that as I've gotten just a little more relaxed about being observant, that people will perceive you the way you perceive you. So when I was timid, they were like, this is awkward. And when I'm confident, I can't come in that day at Shabbos. People don't blink. And every now and then you run into a kind of a crummy producer, somebody who's kind of a curmudgeon about it. But they don't care. They have so many people in Hollywood with very strange habits that I think they find me refreshing. Over here?
Well, if I was your mom, I'd be very proud of you. David, if I've got a daughter who's doing her master's. We've all got daughters, okay? How does she proceed to get almost to where you are in this business? It's tough. Your life is full of auditions, and you learn, and you put yourself out there. How do you get to where you are? Or almost.
How do you get where I am? Is that what you're asking? I only heard the last part.
How does anyone get to where you are in your industry, in
Okay,
your
so
field?
what is the path to actually getting to a successful career in Hollywood?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Or in any job?
Yes.
I hope so. I don't know anything, but I don't know how to
Yes.
be a dentist. I can't help you with that.
No. Yes.
So look, there are as many paths to a successful career as there are people. You know, if I say, well, here's what I did, I went to film school. I wrote a letter to a film school to tell them I wanted to be a missionary and make Christian films, and they let me in, and then I made a Christian film, and then a Mormon hired me to write a Mormon film, and then the Mormon sent it to Don Bluth, the animator in Ireland, and I went to Ireland and wrote for Don, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and then that film got me a job working on a TV show. I mean, what, be a Christian and then be a Mormon and then I was never a Mormon, but it's just, what you have to do is work really hard, you know, and wait for lightning to strike. But lightning won't strike if you don't work really hard. You don't have control over a successful career. That's not up to you. That's just crystal clear. What you have control over is, do you have a great attitude, and do you work really hard? And then do you go to sleep, and do you have a good life? Because if you're not having a good life while you're pursuing this career, you are wasting your days. Because the days are all you have. You have days and hours and minutes, and you have to make the most of them. And then if God wants you to be successful, and I never know what he wants from me. I'm telling you like this, I'll go for months without a job, and I think my career's over, and then bang, you know, something works out of the blue. Things that I thought for sure were going to go, don't, and things that I never heard about all of a sudden show up. And that's just in Hashem's hands. Yes? What's my tip for anybody who wants to make it in the business? I think I said recently that you should work really hard and okay, quick for writers, be in community with other writers, get yourself into a writer's workshop, take classes, get online into writers' communities, get a couple of books on writing, and most importantly, always be writing, okay? I meet a ton of people who come up to me and they say, I want to be a writer, and I say, are you writing anything? No. You don't want to be a writer. You want to be a person who wants to be a writer. Yes, over here. Have I influenced any of them? Yes, they don't want to be like me. No, I do have a number of colleagues that are observant, and we hang together, and it's a lovely little group of fellowship. We're kind of hunkered down together, the little Jewish mafia, you know, and that's been great. I have had a small influence. I try, you know, I'm not an evangelist anymore in the way that I used to be, where I see people and try and convert them. But anytime I can get someone to my table for Shabbos, because that's how I came to it. I really am not a big believer in talking people into following the ways of Hashem. That's not how I came to it. In fact, magnificently, when I went to visit at the Pacific Jewish Center with Michael Medved and that group, they knew I was a Christian when I was showing up, and they knew I was really curious, and they never brought it up. No one ever challenged me. Why are you doing this? What are you up to? Because if you challenged me, I was really articulate about why I was doing it. And it energized me to defend myself. All they did was said, come, have Shabbos. And they welcomed me, and they were warm, and they were loving, and they were brilliant. They knew so much about living and Torah and stuff that I just had never heard, and I thought I was a smart Jew. I was the village idiot as a Jew. I still am. Now I'm just the assistant village idiot, which is good. Great question. How do you protect your children from the negative influences of Hollywood? This is a longer talk. How much time do we have now? We have 4 minutes. We'll get a quick start on it. Listen, this is a super important question. It's really hard, and I've had a hard time with it because obviously I am the horrible influences of Hollywood. And so I'm going to get your kids. They will buy Smurf dolls now. Listen, for the first several years, I never let my kids watch TV. When they were really little, I was able to just keep them off of it, right? Then we had only videos in the house. We controlled what went on the box. Listen, I've worked in a TV room with some of the people that write television for children. And I'll tell you right now, you would never set your children in front of these people and leave them there alone. And yet we do it all the time. We put our kids in front of the tube and we walk away. I don't think that's a smart idea. We also limited severely the amount of time that our children could spend in front of the television. We went to a school where the kids didn't watch TV. Hashem had different plans for me and my children. My son has dyslexia, and my daughter also had a few learning disabilities, so we had to pull them out of that school because we couldn't get all the services we needed. They tried mightily. It was a beautiful school. We wound up at a more modern Orthodox school, and there all the kids were watching TV. Now I had a choice. Do I want to make my kids the outcast kids? And it was tough. So we started letting them watch some Nickelodeon and some Disney, but very limited. Here's a little note I'll give you, a little tip of my own that's not often talked about. There was a rule in our house that made my kids crazy, and my wife was like, why are you being so controlling? Because I can't control anything else. That's why men are controlling. We have no control anywhere else. I used to make my children turn the volume down whenever a commercial came on. Because I know Jonathan Rietti, Rabbi Rietti, I don't know if you ever heard him, you should bring him sometime. He's a phenomenal speaker, and he talks about, he was in the advertising world. They don't care whether you watch the commercial or not, because they know it's going to be on so often, they will have you. And I'm proof. To this day, I grew up on Coca-Cola. I can sing the songs that I heard on a Coke commercial when I was 6 years old. I'd like to teach the world to sing imperfect. I shouldn't know that, right? And I think Coke is I don't drink soft drinks. But I can tell you right now, if I did, I would drink Coke. I think IBM is an amazing company. I would like to drive a Ford. I don't, but I think Ford is a great company. I don't want to think those thoughts. Those were drilled into my head because I sat and watched these subliminal, they're not even subliminal. They're Ford, 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 right? Turn the volume down. You don't need to program your children to be senseless, mindless consumers when they grow up. That's when it kicks in. And it also teaches them boundaries. When you do that, you're telling them, not everything on the TV is good for you. So teach them some boundaries. I'm saying this because in an ideal world, you just wouldn't let them watch TV. And I regret that my kids have been able to watch because I saw their behavior change. I saw their language change. The way you're cool with your friends now has to do with arguing and being flip and putting each other down, right? And then you've got to be 12 years old, you've got to be kissing already. I don't think that's healthy. And we let our kids do it. Now listen, just being realistic, where I live in Los Angeles, my kids would be outcasts if they didn't know what was on TV. So we limit how many hours a week they can watch to a very limited amount. Their homework has to be done. The less they watch, the better. But I also want to say, you don't want your Jewish home to be the home that they regretted being in when they were little. So you've got to walk that fine line. And the most important last thing we'll see is engage. Sit down with them if they're going to watch something, and see what it is, and talk to them about it. And talk about what made sense and what didn't make sense. And say, that was interesting. They did this, this, and this. Would we do that to our friends? As good people, as good human beings, as Jews, do we treat our friends that way? And they'll learn to not believe everything that comes through that box. David Putnam said, that box, this is David Putnam, the producer of Chariots of Fire. He spoke at my graduation at USC's film school. And I remember, he said, you filmmakers have an awesome responsibility. Because when you bring your audience into this darkened theater, and they sit down in front of this dream-sized image, you put it deep into their psyche. And that's what we're doing to our kids. So limit how much they watch it with them, talk to them about it, and turn the volume down on the commercials. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much.